We're at the Murakami Japanese Gardens and Museum out here in Delray Beach, Florida. We are going to test out and have a fun little match against the a6700 and the Lumix S9. Is it a fair fight between a full frame and the APS-C? Probably not, but the price range is really similar. They're both pocketable and very travel friendly, so let's see how they do. Next time you're in Delray Beach, go check out the Japanese Gardens. It's really fun. Nice little walk around, some photo ops there. It's cool. And they got a really good restaurant too. I'm also using a new lens right now. So let me know in the comments if you can guess what it is. You might be able to tell slightly, but leave a comment down below. Video coming up very shortly. So let's talk about what I'm going to be going over in this video with the S9 and the a6700. I had a couple different ideas for this. I didn't really want to do any kind of spec related review. That's just not what I'm interested in. Everyone already knows the specs for the S9, the a6700. These cameras have been out for a while. I've done videos about both of these cameras on this channel. I'll link all those videos at the end. I want to get practical, real world, kind of hands-on stuff. And I'm more basing it in the amateur to moderate camera user, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm kind of gearing the video towards. Also for travel, for vlogging, because vlogging's still cool. Stop it right now. It's the best. All right, I'm gonna show you a couple examples of some pictures I got at the Japanese Gardens to compare. I have some examples of the stability of both cameras. I did a low light test, and I'm also gonna do a color test of what both of these cameras look like to show you the differences. And finally, I'm gonna also talk about probably the biggest deciding factor for me when it comes to both of these cameras is the build quality and the ease of use or everyday use of these cameras. So that's at the end. Let's talk about all those other things first, starting with a few examples of some pictures that I made with these cameras at the Japanese Gardens. Go check it out. Super fun. All these photos are unedited, and I tried to frame them and expose them as closely as I could. Here are the first two shots. To me, the a6700 looks clinically sharp, while the S9 has a much more pleasing look to it. That theme carries over to the next two photos as well. These two are the closest match. I think the sun was playing a factor in the S9, giving it a bit more vibrance in the center of the frame. And here we have a terrible attempt at matching composition. I'm really good at this. Regardless, the S9 looks a bit better to me. The greens in this photo really stand out in the Sony. Here's my lunch. It was delicious. What wasn't delicious was the a6700 not being in focus. The S9 takes the win here. The next four pics are a culmination of all of the prior differences between these two cameras. The Sony being a bit too sharp and robotic, while the S9 gives you a slightly softer look, but overall a more satisfying result. When I got home, I took a few more shots to show the separation and the depth of field from both of these cameras. There are some people that think APS-C cameras don't give you a nice background blur when compared to a full frame, but I don't think that's the case here. The Sony does a great job separating Darth Maul from the background, and when I focus on the Stanley Cup, go Cats, there is a nice foreground blur on Mr. Maul. All right, let's talk about image stabilization. I am on the S9 right now. Sorry, ND adjust in the shadows. This is everything on standard, so the E-Stab is on standard, and the IBIS itself, or operation mode, is on standard as well. And this is just handheld, just walking down the canal. How's it looking? We're turning around. Some rolling shutter, you saw that. Let's switch over to the electronic stabilization in the high mode. This is the most stabilization that you can have for the S9. Thing you notice is probably how much more cropped in it is. So an 18 mil turns into, I don't even know what this would be, 24-ish, maybe it looks like. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Is this good stabilization? Is this doing its job? Am I doing my job? All right, and now we are on a dark looking a6700. My God. This is on the standard stabilization for the a6700, just standard. We'll switch over to active in just a moment. But how's this look? This is standard, walking down the canal, you know, not trying to be careful. I will say that this camera is definitely lighter, and this lens gives you a little bit more field of view, 11 millimeter. What do we think? Standard stabilization. Let's switch over to the active. All right, here we are on active. And my face is still exposed for me, Sony. There we go. All right, so now this is the active stab. There is slightly more of a crop, but really not super noticeable. To me, just looking at the screen, the stab's actually doing a pretty good job. Didn't think I'd feel that way. Let's get back in the studio and actually see the studio. Let's go back to my bedroom where my desk is. Let's compare the two side by side. While we were at the gardens, I had my lovely wife Kate do a highly scientific test with both of these cameras. Everyone say hi to Kate in the comments, please. She loves that. What I'm clearly seeing in the a6700 clip is the bobbing from her footsteps, and she was being very smooth. The S9 is surprisingly not much better. Do you see the left and right micro jitters that I'm seeing? Oh boy. I'm gonna need some help here from everyone watching, because clearly in the first couple clips when I'm walking around like a fat dinosaur, the a6700 is not as good as the S9 on the regular or standard stabilization modes. Is that a word? When you switch over to the active on both of those cameras, I mean the active on the Sony and the high electronic stabilization mode on the S9, looking at both of those clips, they're really close. It's really close. I had a completely different thought going into this segment of the video. I was thinking clearly the S9 is better stabilization than the Sony. When Kate was walking up to the camera at the park, you could see both cameras are kind of bobbing and moving a little bit. The bobbing from the footsteps were definitely more noticeable for the a6700, but the S9 had that weird like left and right sort of emotion when she was walking. Let me know in the comments below who won this one. Next up, let's take a look at some low light tests. Alright, now looking back at these clips, this is where the APS-C sensor and a full frame sensor separate in performance. Full frames obviously letting in more light. You can see a lot more noise patterning in the APS-C. When I went back and took another look, I feel at the 10,000 ISO for the a6700 in the S Cinetone, not in the log. The 10,000 to me with a little bit of noise reduction looks usable. It looks pretty good if you need that shot in a very dark situation, which this was absolutely pretty much like a torture test as far as low light goes. So to see the a6700 with a little bit of noise reduction perform reasonably well, if you need that shot, here it is. When you look back at all the S9 footage, that's where you really see the separation, especially when you get to the Vlog. Vlog in 4000, I'll show you that clip right here. That's no noise reduction, that's right out of camera with a Rec 709 on top of it. Totally happy with it. It looks beautiful, the colors look good, no noise, yeah. But if you have an APS-C, you can still get away with it. As long as you do a little bit of work in post, you can still make the shot look nice. And if anyone's wondering, I use the Gerald Undone Rec 709 Vlog Undone V3 for this shot right here with the S9. Same thing with the A6700. It was the S-Log3 Undone version 4. In the beginning of the video, I did say this was for more of a beginner to intermediate, but if you're getting into log shooting and you don't know how to color grade or any of that kind of stuff, hell, I don't know how to color grade. If you're just getting into it, there's a lot of great companies that make LUTs like Gamut, and also Gerald's LUTs are really good too. I'll leave those links in the description below, so check those out. And I'm not getting paid for any of that, so you're welcome, Gerald. The next thing I'm going to do is use both these cameras in this more controlled situation. We'll talk about some color science and some picture profiles too. We are on the A6700 right now. I am in shutter priority and my white balance is currently at 3800. It's a personal preference where to set your white balance. There is correct ways, obviously, to do it. If you're going to use this camera or any camera for YouTube, social media, stuff like that, and you're setting up in a controlled environment, is this turning into like a YouTube tutorial? I don't even know what I'm talking about half the time, but I do know that when you're in the studio or your studio space or however you set up, you definitely want to put your camera on manual for everything. So right now in shutter priority, the camera is deciding on what aperture to use for the lighting. So if you get closer to it, the shutter will drop. You get farther away, the shutter will come up. So word to the wise, definitely put everything on manual, set everything so it's not moving. Have you ever watched videos where you see the color just shifting through every cut in the edit? That's when you have it on auto white balance. You don't want that to happen. You want to make all your adjustments yourself. What are we even talking about right now? If you're still here, leave a thumb emoji in the comments below. Thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe that just helped you out. I don't know. Hopefully it did. One thing I did not bring up was autofocus, because the autofocus with Sony cameras is the best. If it hits 99% of the time, that's like an average day with a Sony camera. If your Sony's hitting 99% of the time, Lumix hits like 95, honestly. Lumix autofocus is completely fine. It is absolutely usable. I haven't experienced a Lumix autofocus struggle. Those times are very rare, and the Lumix autofocus is really good. Let's get back on the right path here. Talking about color science, when you're using one camera system, you don't notice color changes unless you try different camera brands. Since using my Lumix cameras in the past couple years, I do notice now that Sony has a definite green shift as far as the color goes. When we switch over to the S9, you'll see it right away. So remember the shot, because the S9's coming up next, right? You see it? Color shift. I just reviewed everything that you just watched, and you see all the edits, all my cuts. The light was jumping all over the place, and that's why you set everything to manual to make sure that doesn't happen, because it just doesn't look good. Watching back, absolutely hated it. I was like, oh god, this is terrible, but it's a time of learning and understanding. Now you know. And here is the S9, and blatantly obvious the difference in color here. The saturation of the black is a lot better. The one thing you notice though is that the reds are a little bit more saturated too. So you see in my face a little more red, but overall I think this is a more pleasing look, a more pleasing image, and this is in Cine V2. This is one I use most of the time, especially if I'm just out and shooting or on vacation or doing any of those fun things. Vlogging too. If I'm not using this, then I'm shooting in log, and when you're shooting in log, it gives you a lot more room to move colors around, to change the picture a little bit more to your liking. But there's a couple learning curves that you kind of got to figure out on your way to do it. I still haven't figured out all of it, but for the most part, I think most of my videos look decent. Not that last clip though, that was terrible. Let's talk about the ergonomics, the build quality, and just like the everyday use of both of these cameras. Quick little scene change. Upstairs was getting a little boring. Also, I will apologize in advance if the microphone sounds a little bit different. Who agrees with me real quick? When you're using the DJI mics, or any wireless mics really, when you hold them to your face, obviously they sound a lot better. And they just don't sound as good when you have them mounted down here, but I need both of my hands. All right, let's talk about build quality, ergonomics, everyday use, all of that stuff. In full disclosure, I have some form of grip extension on both of these cameras. Even without the grip extension, the A6700 is a much more comfortable camera to hold for an extended period of time. The S9, however, right out of the box, is not very fun to handle. If you have larger hands or if you have any kind of grip issues, without this extension, it can be a little difficult throughout the day. And now that I'm thinking about it, remember in the beginning of the video where I said both of these cameras were pocketable? That was a complete fabrication. I don't know why I chose that word to use. I apologize, and I promise I won't lie to you again. If I was traveling with either kit, I would be using a comfortable sling, which brings us back to the handling. Does it matter? If you've got one of these cameras on a comfortable shoulder strap and you're just grabbing it every now and then to just take a photo or grab a quick clip, maybe the handling is not a big issue. Is the all-day comfortable grip that important? Intrigue. When it comes to the dials, buttons, and layouts, the a6700 is going to feel more familiar to people coming from traditional camera bodies. It has all the creature comforts you've come to expect, and all the buttons and dials are right where they should be. On the other hand, the S9 has a less traditional layout, meaning it has fewer buttons and dials. If you're coming from a phone and this is your first mirrorless camera, it's a non-factor. Anything you get is gonna feel new at first, but over time, you'll definitely get used to it. For me personally, I do prefer having a dedicated photo, video, and S&Q switch. So the a6700 definitely gets a point for that. The elephant in the room when you're discussing the S9 is the lack of mechanical shutter and EVF. The a6700 has both, and yes, this is a big deal for most people. There is a give and take when it comes to specs, and at this price point, considering what both cameras offer, and that's a choice that you're gonna have to consider when thinking about purchasing one of these cameras. Next thing I'll cover quickly is the build quality. I went over this in full detail in my S9 video. It'll be linked at the end of this video, so if you want, go check that out. Sony gets the clear win here. Hands down, not even close. The a6700 is a tank. The buttons and dials all feel solid, and there's no doubt in my mind that this camera would last for years to come. The S9, on the other hand, meh. Go check out my other video for a full breakdown on that. And now, the most important part of the entire video, let's tally up all the points. Hopefully I've come up with some kind of cool graphic to put right over here. Let's cross our fingers on that one, folks. The first thing we spoke about was the photo specs, or photo capabilities, and I gave this one a draw. Number 2 was the stability. This one, not gonna lie, I was kind of surprised. The a6700 performed a lot better than I thought it would, so this also, I know, Lumix fans, don't kill me. Let's go draw on this one too. Number 3, low light in regular mode and low light in the log modes. Clear winner, no doubt about it. S9, give it a point. Obviously, the full frame comes into play a lot here. APS-C just can't handle low light as well. But that 10,000 ISO with a little bit of noise reduction, it didn't look that bad. Number 4, color science. Obvious point to Lumix and the S9. That green shift in Sony, my God. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm not saying that you can't get around it. I'm just not that talented enough to know my white balances and to know that kind of color grading to make it look any better. I'm sorry, Sony, but S9 all day. Number 5, autofocus. The winner is Sony, but the Lumix S9, it's not too far behind. I think they're catching up, Sony. Number 6, the build quality. Whoa, yeah, sorry, that's all Sony right there. a6700, rock solid. Ergonomics. This one, I am going to give it a draw. And the only reason I'm saying that is these are not pocketable cameras. Sorry again. You're gonna probably have some kind of sling or strap on them. So holding it all day long, does that really matter? Is it really that important? Number 8, like this is 8, is the mechanical shutter and the EVF. If this is an issue for you, then you already know what camera you're probably going to buy. But I want to give a non-biased opinion. I think this is a draw. This was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. In my highly scientific, very professional comparison of both of these cameras, I have these things dead even. They're both great for what they do, and I feel like either one would be a solid choice. I'm sure you want to know what camera that I would pick Lumix S9 or the Sony a6700. You know, don't you hate when you watch a YouTube video like all the way to the end, like this ridiculously long video, and the person that went through that whole process, they just end the video without making an actual firm decision? Like, pick a lane, man. Like, tell us which one you're gonna do. That's probably like the most annoying thing for me when I'm watching a video. I know that. But all right, hey, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. I'm kidding. That was a terrible joke, right? That was good. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. All right. Here's my choice. This is my pick. This is my personal pick, and I'll explain why. I'm going S9. I know. Before you leap on your keyboard and break your fingers, just hear me out a second. I'm shooting a lot more video than I am photo, and I think that the color and the image quality and the video specs that come out of the S9 for that price, full frame, that overshadows all of the cons about this camera. Let me know in the comments below, which camera would you pick? Where was I right? Where was I wrong? Let's have a conversation. If you made it this far, that's amazing. That's incredible, because this is probably like a half hour at this point. Hopefully this is entertaining. Hopefully this is educational. Hopefully I helped you pick which of these cameras to go with. If you want to see my full breakdown of the S9, go check out this video over here. If you want to watch a few videos about the a6700, go on to these videos over there. And I'll see you over on one of those. Right. All right. Okay, bye.